You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
Alrighty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and I am joined, as always, by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Guys, how are we doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. What a crazy, weird, kind of blah weekend in the NFL. A lot of upsets, so I guess if that's your frame of mind, it was interesting. The Bills looked bad. The Cowboys looked bad. It was just different than what a lot of us expected, and quite frankly, it cost me a little bit of money, so I'm not too happy. But other than that, here we are again on Tuesday. We're ready for the next week, and overall, I get to hang out with you guys, so it's not too bad.
I think there's got to be at least half of the people that were involved in like eliminator pools that are no longer involved in eliminator pools after this week, because oh boy, what we all thought were sure things, especially with Jacksonville, with Buffalo going up against Jacksonville, with Denver going up against Dallas after Denver traded away the face of the franchise. Like, I'm not sure what, like, this is it's just the NFL, and it's crazy, and week in and week out, you have no freaking idea what's going to happen, which I guess makes it pretty fun, because what's better than not knowing what's going to go on? You never want to know what the ending of the story is going to be.
Except for the fact when I do this, and I call my shots repeatedly, and like very few of them came true this week, and it made me very sad. And I'm in the same boat that Kevin was, that, there was a lot of things that I had kind of expected to come to play and had expected to see, and just none of them really happened.
So I'll tell you guys, I'm in that 538. It's a confidence pick 'em, I guess. And the couple times before the season that I've put a team at 100%, that I think they're going to win 100%, I have hit on it. And you only get 25 points if you hit, but if you lose that pick, you lose 75 points. And so this week I had two 100% confidence picks. They were Buffalo and Dallas, and I missed both of them. And that was 150 points. That's a 200-point swing, basically. Instead of getting 50 points plus 50, I'm now down 125. So that one hurt a lot. I did not see – I was able to watch the Broncos game. I did not see that coming. And I think after a while there, after the Cowboys went for it the second time on fourth down and didn't get it there early in the game, you could just see like, Dallas just does not have it today. Like, you could just see like Dallas just does not have it. And as a Broncos fan, that's great. As somebody who, was pretty heavily favored on the Cowboys, it was not what I wanted to see, but I mean, that's the way the league goes.
Absolutely. Got a couple of comments coming in here. First one over on Twitter at TFF Dudes, saying this week was brutal. Absolutely agree with that. And then Shooter Shoot Basketball Podcast, Kenny, we've had him on the show before, asking, did anyone get that Bills, Titan, Broncos, Giants parlay ticket? Nope. I wish I had, but I don't know that.
If I did, you wouldn't catch me on this podcast anymore. I can tell you that much.
If you did, you would have lost it anyway, because the Bills lost.
Yes,
they didn't cover the 14 and a half.
The Jaguars, Titans, Broncos, Giants parlay.
No, I was on the opposite end of
just about every one of those games.
Yeah, just about. And I didn't play the Rams, Titans, or the Bills, Jags, but I had the Raiders. And I had the Cowboys as part of a 7-game parlay that Derek and I were talking about on Friday that would have paid out huge. So win some, you lose some.
Yep. So, guys, if you do have comments, anything like that, make sure you throw them out there, questions, things like that. We love talking and interacting with you guys. So if you have any questions, concerns, comments, anything like that, toss them out here. Let's chat about them. Waiver wire pickups, trades, those types of things. We're going to have a great show in store for you tonight. We've got, the normal Tuesday show where we'll hit up some of the pines, the shines, the clutch, not so much. We got some waiver wires we'll talk about. But one of the best things that you can do to help us out is head over to YouTube, click the subscribe button on the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button, ring the bell. One of the best ways to help us out, and appreciate everybody that can help us out there. Nate, welcome back. I know we've seen you in the chat before. Nate on YouTube is asking, should I start Waller or Kittle this week? What's your thoughts here, guys?
I'm starting Waller against Kansas City. The defense hasn't been that good. The Raiders play Kansas City tough consistently. I do expect Kittle to be more involved with them playing the Rams, but with Waller not coming off of injury, there's a little bit more game fluidity, I guess is what I'm going to call it, right? Like he's not having to get back up to speed and that type of thing. So for me, I'm going to play Darren Waller this week and just hope he sees, 7, 8, 9 targets and can bring one down in the end zone and kind of put it up over the top.
Yeah. Kevin, are you playing against Waller in any leagues this week? Because that will sway my decision.
Not that I know. And really, it's in the home league, guys. It's the home league. No, I'm not going up against Waller in the home league. So he's not going to go bananas.
Because you've got he's going up against Mark Andrews in the home league for tight end this week.
There you go.
I ain't scared about that though.
I'd be more worried about the other two that just came off of IR in that league. But
yeah.
Bullshit trade.
I would also lean towards Waller in this one. Keep in mind the Rams, that defense is going to look a little different with Von Miller in there. Expected to play, I guess, on Monday night. So I would say, we've seen what the Chiefs defense is, and it's not very good right now. And so I would go with Waller over Kittle. For everything Kevin said, and then on top of that, it's just that Rams defense is going to be a little different. And I think that while Jimmy G might be able to spot George Kittle every once in a while, I just think Waller is the better option.
Yeah, I also like Waller in this one as well. So unanimous decision for every one of us saying Waller over Kittle. A lot of that has to do with the fact that you'll see the Chiefs and the Raiders. I think that one's going to get in a little bit of a shootout. To Kevin's point, these two play each other tough. And a lot of times when they play each other tough, it usually ends up more in a track meet style type of thing with a lot of back and forth type of thing. So that's how I ultimately kind of see that one go in there as well. So I'm going to go with Waller on that one. Guys, any other thoughts on this?
What a wonderful decision to have to make.
Yes.
Though.
Yes, absolutely. That's always rough when you got to pick between two really good options there. So good on you.
It's pretty easy because Kittle can't stay on the damn field.
That's also true.
Not his fault, but who knows?
Kind of.
I don't know anything about Kittle's pregame regimen. It might be part of his fault, but it is what it is. Waller's the go there. So.
Alrighty, guys. Well, any other thoughts coming off of week 9? Any other reactions, thoughts before we start heading into the Pine and Shine recaps?
In all seriousness, if it wasn't for Nick Chubb, do we have any true fantasy standout performances?
Jonathan Taylor was
the Thursday night game. That's right. That was so long ago. I almost forgot about this. So yeah, you have Taylor at 1, Chubb at 2, right? That's how they finished up. And
yeah, depending upon whether you're looking at half point or you were looking at full point PPR, things like that.
Night. Good options. I mean, at least they're first round talent guys, right? Like they're guys that went the back end of the first round, top end of the second, and so they produced for sure. But nothing much out of Kamara. Zeke was in and out with his knee injury. He didn't play great. McCaffrey got a little bit of run, right? I mean, he didn't have a terrible game. He started to kind of get back in the swing of things, so that was good. But it wasn't a great week. I mean, look at across the board, fantasy scores were just so low. There's just a lack of production and subpar quarterback play. So your pass catchers didn't do a whole lot. And the two running backs who broke off long runs and got in the end zone were kind of clearly the two best options of the week.
Right. And actually, James Conner outscored both of them looking at half-point PPR scoring there.
Did he really?
But it was a bunch of guys that but it was a bunch of guys
that
got
in the 10th round
just weren't expecting, right? Like your horses you expected to have the horses you expected to have, that you expect to have good weeks week in and week out. It just wasn't, it wasn't their week. It was some of the secondary, the role player guys that went crazy. That's just kind of how week 9 shook out.
I had James Conner firmly planted on my bench in my work league, but in my defense, I started Chubb, so I got the points there. I started Josh Jacobs against the Giants defense I thought was going to go crazy, and I started Aaron Jones thinking that they were just going to force feed him the ball without Aaron Rodgers, and that was a crap show. Jordan Love is terrible. Bad.
I mean, if it weren't for injuries and buys and COVID list, James Conner wouldn't have been in my starting lineup. That's for dang sure. But he got forced in there, and I walked away with the deal betterment of it.
Absolutely. So really it takes nothing more than looking at the wide receivers and the top 6 wide receivers for finish on the week in a half-point PPR scoring, right? Number 1 was Elijah Moore. Number 2 was Devonta Smith. Number 3 was Olamide Zacharias. Darnell Mooney at number 4. Malik Turner at number 5. And Tim Patrick at number 6. And I know that was one that those are 6 guys that every single person made sure to start on that one, right?
You probably just listed off like the waiver wire on some of our
that was my point, because I know that a lot of those names were guys that we had on the waiver wire going into week 9 that were like, well, if you have to play them, there's some guys here that may do some things there. But for the most part, these were guys that weren't rostered in a lot of leagues, right? Like Elijah Moore, 50 or 21% rostership. Devonta Smith at 85. Olamide Zacharias, 0.7% rostership. Darnell Mooney at a 45%. Malik Turner, 0. And Tim Patrick at a 24%. Like, none of these guys were guys that were, that most of the time, like, these guys weren't in people's lineups. Devonta Smith is probably the only one that was actually in somebody's lineup last week.
I mean, every year, I think there's a week like this, right? And it's a battle of attrition. Guys are banged up. Bye weeks are crazy. I mean, we knew, weeks 7, 9, and 13 were going to be rough for fantasy players, because that's when a lot of the horses were a lot of the good teams were going to be on buys, and a lot of the guys that you drafted early, it just so happened that those were the weeks. So we knew that week 9 going into the season, even remember on draft night, we were like, week 9 is going to be rough. Week 9 is going to be rough. And
so this should have been a great week for receivers.
Right. But I'm not horribly surprised that it was, guys that you don't expect that went off. I'm not terribly surprised by that. I think it happens once a year, maybe a couple weeks a year, but I'm not surprised that it happened this week. Now, that's all hindsight, right? Because I'm looking back and seeing it. I probably wouldn't have expected that, going into the week. If you'd have told me, hey, Elijah Moore is going to be the number 1 receiver in the week, I would have been, I
was floored. In a week
is there
where
only
you
one
have,
game being played?
Right. In a week where you have Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, all going. And more, right? There's more than that, but just the top of the top.
Yeah.
And nothing. I mean, Kupp got his catches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kupp got his catches, and for PPR format, he at least helped save some things there. But there wasn't a whole lot of anything to be happy or proud of this week.
No.
Like, looking up and down my rosters, and honestly, I had a pretty decent week. Like, I went through and I mean, I hit 75% this week across all the leagues, which is a great week. But holy crap, they were low-scoring games. I was like, oh my gosh, how did I win this? Like, this is so bad.
Because the other team was having the same issue you were.
Oh yeah,
they just had it worse.
Absolutely.
Same thing too. You look at your quarterbacks. Number 3 ranked was Matt Ryan. Number 4 was Josh Johnson, Carson Wentz, and Teddy Bridgewater. I know that everybody was beating down the door to start.
Josh Johnson.
Yeah, was just beating down the door to start those. And out of all of those, maybe you were starting Carson because of, he's been riding the hot hand and had a decent matchup there. But for the most part, like a lot of those guys were guys you weren't expecting to even see the like Josh Johnson. Nobody I think was expecting to see the field for him. Teddy Bridgewater, I don't think anybody was expecting him to have a top, QB1 performance, much less, a top tier QB week 1 type of performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely wild. Definitely a wild week. Hopefully, water will find its level here as we move on to week 10.
Yes, absolutely. So definitely an interesting week and one that I'm happy to bid adieu to week 9 here and just hop on over into week 10 and hopefully we see a little different results here. But guys, let's go ahead and hit up the pines and the shines for week 9. Give me your pines, give me your shines for week 9.
All right, I'll lead us off here. I said to not start the Falcons' backup running back, which again, smart move, right? But he did get 9 carries, only 13 yards on those 9 carries. Saw 1 catch for 5 yards. I know that was a bit of a reach, but I was in a bit of a rut, fellas. So I'm going to take my wins when I get them, and I hit on that one.
There you go. Mine was a guy that I think a lot of folks were expecting a little bit more for this past week with the fact that Derrick Henry was going to be out and you were going to potentially see maybe a different Tennessee Titans offense there. This one didn't go necessarily how I was foreseeing it to go because of the fact that the Titans really kind of got out early, got some good defensive plays on the Rams there and managed to jump up to a lead and effectively kind of controlled the game that way. But I had AJ Brown, who 5 receptions on 11 targets and only 42 yards, 0 touchdowns. So that was a hit for me on the AJ Brown.
Yeah, I told you to pine Michael Pittman going into the Thursday night game. The Jets had been doing really well against outside receivers, and yardage-wise, they did pretty good, right? They held Pittman to 5 catches, 64 yards, but it was definitely that touchdown that got him over the edge. And it was a great catch. Got that third step down right before the ball got knocked out of his hands, so they confirmed it on the field. But I take the miss because he got in for 6.
Yeah, and that was really the thing that separated that one out. If they rule that as an incomplete type of deal, you definitely hit that one there. Let's go ahead and head on over into the shines of the week.
Again, we'll leave this up to the crowd, and if you've got comments, feel free to chime in here. I said Justin Jefferson. He only had 3 catches for 69 yards, but he did find the end zone, and it was a long touchdown, so he probably got some bonus points for the length of that touchdown. We have labeled it as a hit, but if you've got comments, if you guys think that that was not a shine performance, go ahead and weigh in. We'll pull the crowd here, and we'll see what you guys have to say. For right now, we'll label it as a hit for Justin Jefferson.
Alrighty. I had Dionte Johnson, who I thought was going to again, I thought that Pittsburgh game was going to go a little bit different, and that's a whole other topic. But I had Dionte Johnson as the shine. Had some decent work from a volume perspective, 5 of 6, 56 yards, but didn't see the end zone. And I saw him as having a little bit bigger game on that one. 2 carries, 11 yards. Definitely did not hit the shine on that one.
Yeah, I took Zeke Elliott in a miss here. Part of it was, again, due to the injury with him banging up his knee or his ankle, depending on what report you're reading. And then part of it was game script, right? The Cowboys trying to play catch up for the entire game and not really getting anything done until the final 6 minutes of the game. So 10 carries, 51 yards, 3 for 3 for 25. So I'll take the miss on Zeke. But I am going to parlay this into a secondary thought of, for watching that game, for those people who are banging the table, and there's a lot in this industry, banging the table for Tony Pollard, thinking that he's just as good as Zeke is, watch this game this past Sunday. It's night and day. Like, if Zeke's not banged up and trying to get through this knee injury, when he was on the field, he looked night and day different than Tony Pollard. He looked like a better back. He honestly looked more explosive than Pollard, which is completely different than what we saw the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season when everyone thought Pollard was far more explosive than Zeke. But he just looked like he had a bit more want to, a bit more drive about him. And it is clear that he is the best back on that Cowboys roster. And as long as this injury isn't significant, and it doesn't sound like it is, he's the clear-cut number one in Dallas. It is not a 1 and 1B situation like we thought it could have been the first third of the season. He is clearly 1A and B.
I mean, Pollard's best work was on the kickoff return, right? And they had the opportunity to say, yeah, you know what, Zeke, it's not our day. We're just going to turn and hand the ball off to Pollard, and get Pollard, his run. But the Cowboys didn't do that. I mean, they brought Zeke back in. I mean, there was a shot of Zeke on the sideline after halftime with his knee completely wrapped up, and then he was trotted right back out there. So, I mean, if it was anything, this injury, if it was anything, they probably would have shut him down and brought in Tony. But I'm not sure that the Cowboys even see it that way now, Kevin. To your point. I don't know what is going on with Tony Pollard, but if he would have been in any, usable format, you would figure that they would have, kept Zeke down, because look, they weren't going to win that game. I mean, they just did not have it. So why not get, Tony Pollard some run and save Zeke? So I don't know what's going on there in Dallas with that situation, but you're right. I mean, Zeke was clearly the better back. He's just the better option for them to try and get their offense going and get them on rhythm and on time. They just didn't have it on Sunday.
Well, and even if it's not Zeke running the ball or catching the ball out of the backfield, that pass protection looks very different with Zeke back there versus Tony Pollard back there. There was a lot of times that you saw the Denver pass rush getting home and putting pressure on that when Pollard was in the game, that when Zeke was back there on some of that pass pro, you didn't necessarily see the same thing because Zeke was picking up the guy that got through and gave Dak that extra half second type of thing to get the ball, try and find his read and get the ball down the field. So even if Zeke's not necessarily making an impact in the running game or the this release valve type of pass catching there, he makes a big difference in that passing game there. And that's something that we've seen hold true in more than one game there. Like even the very first game that we saw back there with Tampa Bay in week 1, right? Like that was a thing that a lot of people wanted to knock Zeke and say that he didn't look great and knock that performance. But the pass protection that he allows for Dak is night and day difference between him and Tony Pollard for sure.
Now, I don't want to belabor the point here, but Dak looked like a guy coming back off of an injury. Like he just did not look 100%. I think, certainly his lack of production was helped by the fact that, his receivers treated the football as if it was a hot potato, and they just, they were spiking it to the ground like they were, trying out for a volleyball team. But it was that was just I guess a perfect storm for the Broncos to walk into Dallas and come away with a win, because Dak didn't look good. Zeke didn't look all that great. And the Broncos, I think, just had a little bit more will to it. I think that, Dak being off a little bit, maybe being a half step slow from coming off of that injury, and just not having the timing and everything down, I think that played a large part into how that game ended up going too. That, and they never had the football. I mean, man, they never had the football.
No, they really didn't. Denver did a great job possessing time of game there. And again, to your point there, Alex, like when you're talking about being off, like there was a couple of times that CeeDee Lamb had his guy beat, and those are normally catches that you see Dak and CeeDee just connect on without any. And there was a couple of shots down the field that just missed on and caused one of my not so muches there. But we'll get to that one here in a little bit. Question coming in on YouTube. Nate saying, should I start Russell Wilson or Jalen Hurts? Man, I think you got to almost ride the hot hand I say hot hand, but Jalen Hurts has just been good for fantasy. Russell Wilson coming back there. Like, I don't know that you can go the Russell Wilson if you versus Jalen Hurts if you can help it and can avoid it.
This is an interesting one because Jalen Hurts is going to go up against the Broncos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, what is this Broncos defense now? They certainly looked the part on Sunday of a very, very good dominating defense. But Jalen Hurts has been one of those guys that, for 3 quarters, he's just got awful. And then the final quarter, he's able to light it up a little bit because the game's so far out of hand. But those points still play in fantasy football, right? Like, sure, they may not translate to wins and losses, for the actual record, but those points still play in fantasy football. And with Russ coming back off the injury, it feels rushed. I know if you guys all saw the hype video, somebody I saw on Twitter was like, geez, did Russ cure cancer or something while he was away? It was like a super crazy hype video for him coming back off of his finger injury. But that's an interesting one. I would lean Jalen Hurts at this point just because there's more option there. And with Russ coming back, I always like, a game back to see. I think we saw that last week with Dak. A game back would have been nice. But that's interesting. I think I lean Hurts on this one.
I think it's a coin flip.
Yeah.
And I think you can make a pretty strong argument either side. Seahawks are going up against the Packers, whose defense has looked really, really good these past couple weeks. Like they're really kind of starting to gel together and do some good things that the first part of the season, I wasn't quite sure their defense was going to be able to keep them in games. But against Arizona and Kansas City, 2 very high-powered offenses, the Packers defense did a good job keeping everybody in check. And then we have the Broncos who go down to Dallas and kind of at least shock a lot of people. I'm not going to say shock the world. It's not like, they won the Super Bowl or anything, but they did.
It was a top 10 defense going into that game. Like, let's not be crazy.
It was the best defensive performance that we've seen this season in the NFL.
Yeah.
It really was, going up against that caliber of offense and to be able to do what they did for 3.5 quarters before they put the backups in and the Cowboys got those 2 late touchdowns and whatever. But for 3.5 quarters, they had that Cowboys offense completely out of sorts. So I think it's a coin flip. Jalen Hurts probably has, honestly, a safer floor because he's more willing to run with the ball.
No.
On the flip side, the Cowboys have seen a running quarterback or a quarterback who can run earlier this season in Lamar Jackson, and they did a good job against Lamar. He didn't beat them with his legs. He beat them with his arm. And if it comes down to that, I don't trust Jalen Hurts to beat the Broncos with his arm because typically that Denver team is not going to run away with the game.
Yeah.
Like this Cowboys game was more of an aberration. They're really only scoring about 24 points a game, and really it's not even that much, right? I think they're averaging 21.5 or something like that. So, that game will stay close, but I just don't trust Hurts to throw the ball to beat the Cowboys. Russ, at least he has 2 top-end weapons in DK and Lockett. So for me, I can sign off on the Hurts idea that you guys were talking about. But if anybody had a opposing view and said, no, Russ is the start, you can form a very strong argument that would be easy to understand and go along with also.
Right. And that's so Dak even as bad as that performance was, still had a QB1 performance on the week, finished his quarterback 9 and scoring there. So that being the case, right. And for the most part, Dak's performance through about three to 3.5 quarters was almost unusable for fantasy, and then picked it up in a lot of garbage time type of things. And that's going to be a lot of the difference there that I think that you'll see with Jalen Hurts. He'll get you the floor on this game. So he'll get you probably 50 yards on the ground, somewhere right in there. So he'll get you the rushing floor on that one, and he'll still probably put up between about 200 and 250 yards in the air, with probably 120 to 130 of those coming in the fourth quarter there. When they're trailing, when they're doing some garbage time, when they're doing some of that kind of stuff there. So I'm going to lean Jalen Hurts, who right now is QB3 on the season for fantasy, over Russell Wilson, who's coming back off of that injury. So that's where I'm going, and the reasoning behind that one. So thanks for the question, Nate. Good question there. Alrighty, guys, let's go ahead and move on over into the clutch and the not so much. So who came in clutch and who was not so much for your fantasy team?
So an unlikely clutch, but this player scored the only touchdown on my entire roster this week. And his performance single-handedly lifted me to victory over the number one team in our league. And I am talking about Justin freaking Fields, showing what he can start to do in the NFL. The game, you could tell the game is starting to come to him a little bit more now. 17 of 29, not great numbers, but his depth of target and depth of completion is there. 291 yards. Had the touchdown to Mooney there late to kind of really try and pull him ahead, and then things unraveled against the Steelers. But and then 8 carries for 45 yards. Like these numbers are what you need from Justin Fields if you're in a 2-quarterback league, right? Like if you're not stacked at quarterback, and that is definitely the deficiency of my home league team, is my number 2 quarterback. But if Justin Fields can continue to improve upon these numbers and is throwing for 250 to 275 yards a game consistently, anything over that's a bonus. And if he can get 40 to 60 yards rushing, like, you could live with that, and that's a solid performance. So Fields on Monday night showing the world that he is starting to get it. He is starting to understand it. And here's to hoping that after the bye week, they implement some things a little bit differently. They let him do some different things and really unleash Justin Fields here for the back half of the season.
Did you realize that Justin Fields was QB number 3 over the last 2 weeks? So last 2 weeks performances combined puts him QB3 on that time frame.
I didn't, but after thinking about that for a second and understanding what he did 2 weeks ago against the Niners and kind of that breakout game of his rookie campaign, right, and then following it up with his performance Monday night. I can get along with that between the buys and everything else. Like he is getting it, guys. He just is. Side tangent. Sorry. Allen Robinson, for those of us who have been writing Allen Robinson off, Allen Robinson was highly involved in that game plan. Mm-hmm. He really was. He had 2 or 3 catches that got pulled back because of offensive penalties. He caught that deep pass late to really get the Jets in position to take the lead and make the Steelers earn that victory. Like, he was looking for Allen Robinson, and it showed. And I think that's part of why his numbers looked better and a bit more efficient, because he was able to get their, star pass catcher involved in the game, which then helped loosen things up a little bit for the run and opened up some passing lane or some rushing lanes for Fields even to take off and run a little bit when TJ Watt and company wasn't crashing down on top of him.
Absolutely.
All right. My clutch was James Conner, who surprised me again. I did not want to put James Conner in my starting lineup. I was forced into having to put James Conner in my lineup because of buys, because of injuries, because I didn't know that David Montgomery was going to come off the IR 2 hours before the freaking game on Monday night. So he got thrust into the lineup and showed out. He had 21 carries for 96 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 5 of 5 receiving for 77 yards and the touchdown, this long touchdown, which was it really padded the receiving stats. But he had a great week for me, and I was able to what was a comfortable lead heading into Monday night, was able to, thanks in large part to his production.
I like it. The my clutch was a couple of positions that we normally don't see. Especially in our format and our show on what we talk about there. But 2 IDP players in the home league, and that was Fred Warner, who put up 17 tackles and absolutely had a great game, and Eric Kendricks, who had 14 tackles and, again, an outstanding game. And much of my win in the home league was fueled by my my IDP players and IDP performances that were put up there. Let's go ahead and head over to the not so muches. So, guys, who was your not so much performance?
Everyone else on my roster not named Justin Fields. Zeke, Aaron Jones, meh. DJ Moore, blah. Justin Jefferson, meh. Like, I still don't know that that's a hit, but meh. I mean, up and down. Like, it was just a abysmal performance. And on a week where Tom Brady was on bye, who is my QB1, my roster felt that greatly.
For everybody else's knowledge of it, Kevin was the 9th highest scorer in the league out of the 12 teams, and he got the win because the team he was playing was the 11th highest scorer. So that should let you know where Kevin was.
It doesn't matter how you get him.
No, it does not. It does not. But you can understand why Kevin is upset after a win, which is tough because he was the 9th highest scorer and still squeaked out a win. But I can understand the frustration. My team, on the other hand, number 1 scorer this week in the league. I will say disappointing performance out of Mike Williams, who it's been kind of a struggle this year with him. And what the crazy part is usually if Mike Williams has a bad game, that also means that my stack that I have with Justin Herbert means he didn't have a great game either, but not the case this week. Justin Herbert had a fantastic week, but Mike Williams was not a part of that. So Mike Williams had just 2 catches for 58 yards on 5 targets. And that's incredible because Justin Herbert threw the ball 38 times. 3 of his 5 incompletions were Mike Williams' way.
Yeah, mine not so much was a Cincinnati Bengal named Tyler Boyd, who had 1 reception on 2 targets for 11 yards. One of those that due to some bye weeks, due to some of my some injuries and some IR type of things, I was forced to play Tyler Boyd, and I was just happy to sneak out of week 9 with a victory in the home league. Again, fueled very much by my IDP performances because I didn't get much out of CeeDee Lamb or Dak Prescott or some of these other folks out there. So very happy to sneak out with a win on that one. Guys, any other thoughts on clutch and not so much? Alrighty, let's go ahead and head on over into the waiver wires. So starting off with the quarterbacks, got a couple of waiver wire potential targets there. Number 1, Teddy Bridgewater. Number 2, Mac Jones, Mike White, Ben Roethlisberger, Trey Lance, Taylor Heineke. What are your thoughts on the QB situation?
I think for me this week, Heineke's probably going to be my top choice, I think. And I know it's scary saying that going up against Tampa Bay, but at least with Tampa Bay's defense, and they're still struggling in that secondary, like he's going to have some time to throw the ball. He should be getting Logan Thomas back, which should help him and Terry McLaurin both. Curtis Samuel may or may not be coming back. We will see how that plays out. So he might be getting some weapons back, and it's a good defense to kind of test it out and see what you can get done here. I'm fine with Teddy Bridgewater. He's throwing the ball a bit more than Mac Jones is. Mike White, Mike White, I guess, isn't a bad. if you play and he's throwing the ball, right? So you can at least take some solace in that. But good Lord, like he seems a little fragile now after playing a start and getting half a quarter in, and all of a sudden he gets tingly in his arm, and Josh Johnson goes in and lights the world on fire. Like I mean, that one's tough. I'd probably stay away from that in the Jets. So Heineke, then Bridgewater, then Jones. Roethlisberger, I don't want any part of. Mike White, nah, probably not, because I just don't trust Jets offense. And Trey Lance,
He's not playing. He's
not playing. If you have a deep bench and he's sitting out there, it may not be worth. It may be worth the flyer. Like the 49ers can only absorb so many more losses before they just make the change and see what they have for the last bit of the season. And you want to be on the right side of that because of the running bonus that Trey Lance will be able to get your fantasy production. So that's a gamble, but I just don't know that I'm quite there yet.
Yeah, I like Heineke too, just because as we've seen, like Tampa's run defense is crazy good. So, they're gonna have to throw the ball if they're gonna move the ball. So I like Heineke a little bit more this week. Again, Teddy's getting his run, and Mac. I mean, Mac is just like he's like a navy blue suit. It's reliable. You can use it, but like it's not flashy at all.
Is that a reference to New England or the navy blue suit?
The navy blue suit, I guess.
I guess two guys that we could talk about that I'm sure on everybody's waiver wire, or I shouldn't say everybody's, but a large part of waiver wires is Jacoby Brissett and now PJ Walker, right? With the news coming down with Darnold, PJ Walker is going to get his chance. Who knows what's going on with Tua and his fractured finger, and he kind of seems like an injury basket for Miami here over the course of 2 seasons. So we're going to see some of that going on. So I guess those are two guys that are probably on your waiver wire also. In 2 quarterback leagues, you have to pay attention to them, but I guess just for the sake of bringing him up, I will also tell you that in single quarterback leagues, I'm not playing either one.
And the Thursday night game throws obviously a wrench into this with Jacoby or Tua. But I will say, like the Ravens pass defense, they give up yards. So like they're going to be able to move the football through the air. Regardless, I guess, who's at quarterback. I'd be a little bit more comfortable with Brissett than with Tua, which is weird to say, but I think that there is something to that. If you are desperate, Jacoby Brissett, I don't think is a horrific, play this week if he's the one that's playing.
Fair enough. Let's go ahead and head over to the running backs where you got Carlos Hyde, Ty Johnson, Jordan Howard, Benjamin, Jordan Howard in there, Ramondre Steven, Brandon Bolden, Le'Veon Bell, Devontae Freeman, and Phillip Lindsay rounding out the top 9 there. And yes, I realize that Lindsay is on bye this week with the Texans, but that would be that number 9 spot in there. What are your thoughts here? If Kevin's talking, he's on mute.
Oh, well, I'll go here before Kevin gets going. There's another name that I would pay attention to, and that is the guy who was the breakout from a couple Thursday nights ago, and that's Ernest Johnson. If people thought that he was just kind of a one and done, there's some COVID issues in Cleveland there, and so they're down to not a lot of running back help. So Ernest Johnson might be somebody else to keep your eye on if he's still available. If people kind of went away from him after Chubb came back and let the world, did what he did. I don't know about, Carlos Hyde. That's pure dependent on if James Robinson can't go. I haven't seen anything yet on James Robinson. If you guys have something, an update on what he is, I didn't really look at what James Robinson was. I thought he might be ready to go this week, but
Urban expects him to go.
Yeah. So that's kind of a buyer beware, and pay attention to who's going to get the run there. All that being said, the Colts run defense, who knows I think the Colts have kind of figured things out and they've gotten through their gauntlet. And I think the Colts are a lot better than what their record reflects. And so I'd still be a little iffy with that matchup going into this week.
Yeah, I think Jordan Howard's honestly probably the top back that people are going to be looking to add. He seems to kind of at least taking that lead role while Miles Sanders is out, and then who knows how it's going to play out. So I don't love the Philly backfield, but if you are desperate, Jordan Howard's going to be leading that backfield in touches, I would venture to say. Benjamin doesn't really do anything for me. I think he's just going to be a spell back for Connor. Ty Johnson, the only way he's relevant is if he falls into the end zone, and the Jets don't get in the end zone all that often, so I'm not looking forward to that a whole bunch. Brandon Bolden's kind of a sneaky PPR play, filling in for that James White role since he went on IR. He's been fairly productive here the past few weeks, so Bolden's kind of an option in deep PPR leagues that you can look at. But outside of that, I think that kind of dries it all up. I don't want anything to do with Carlos Hyde, Le'Veon Bell, Deonta Foreman, or Philip Lindsay.
Very good. Let's go ahead and hit up the wide receivers there. So wide receivers, you've got number 1 Ayuk, Shenault, Gallup, Peoples-Jones, Van Jefferson, Rashad Bateman, Tim Patrick, Elijah Moore, and T.Y. Hilton. What are your thoughts here?
I like – this is a good list in all seriousness. Like Brandon Ayuk, the past couple weeks is starting to get more involved. So if he's sitting out there on a waiver wire, go pick him up. I mean, there's certainly guys that you have on your – or at least most teams have on their roster that they could dump in replace of Brandon Ayuk. And for Jimmy Garoppolo to hold on to that starting job, he has to get more receivers involved besides Debo Samuel. So I like the Brandon Ayuk ad. I like the Michael Gallup ad. And I know that there's a lot of mouths to feed in Dallas, but guys, he's still in a contract year. We saw what he could do week 1 and how comfortable Dak Prescott was with him. So again, if you can manage to swipe him up, maybe he's able to help you here down the stretch. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a big boomer bust play, right? We've seen a couple weeks where he's boomed, sandwiched in between. He's had absolutely diddly squat as far as fantasy goes. And then Tim Patrick and Elijah Moore. Tim Patrick's going to be more consistent. Elijah Moore has seemingly found a rapport with White. So as long as Zach Wilson's out, I think Elijah Moore actually remains fantasy relevant there. And then another one is Russell Gage is a guy I'd keep my eye on. He had 7 or 8 targets this past week, was much more productive than the goose egg he put up the week prior. And it seems like he's finally healthy coming off of those injuries. So they got to throw the ball to somebody besides Kyle Pitts. And in my mind, Russell Gage is probably the best wide receiver option that they have.
Yeah, with Tim Patrick, I mean, it's his he benefits so much from Jerry Jeudy being back in the lineup, because now teams have to respect Cortland Sutton. They have to respect Jerry Jeudy. And so all of a sudden he kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And, Teddy Bridgewater is a smart enough quarterback that he's going to find, the open guy or throw the ball away. But like Tim Patrick, I think as long as, Jeudy and Sutton are healthy, like I think he does get, plenty of looks his way. He's a guy that I would probably maybe move up on this list just because of I think that the consistency of the volume that he's going to see based on the other two that, are going to draw a lot of attention. He kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So he's a guy that I would move up a little bit. But this list, Gallup, we'll see kind of what he looks like coming back, right? I'm a little little nervous. I've got a decision to make on Michael Gallup in the home league because I've had him firmly planted on in one of my IR slots since week 1. So, we're going to have a discussion a little later on about some receiving work. And I'll be honest to say that it's a little selfish discussion that we're about to have.
All righty. I like it. Let's go ahead and head over to the tight ends here. Logan Thomas, Tyler Conklin, Dan Arnold, Evan Ingram, Adam Troutman, and Donald Parham Jr. Thoughts on this list?
Logan Thomas is the clear one. If he's been sitting out there, Evan Ingram's right behind him, seemingly getting more involved in that Giants offense here over the last 2 weeks. I'm just not a big believer in Conklin, guys, and it has nothing really to do against him, but I just can't make heads or tails of this Vikings passing game at the moment. Like, you have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, and both of them are having down weeks, and you're still losing these games where you should be able to get them involved in garbage time and catch-up mode and everything else. And Cousins, just the chemistry doesn't seem there. Like, it just seems like a weird situation. So it's Thomas, then Evan Ingram, and then it's just a cast of characters, in my opinion, after that.
Like it. All right. Very good. Very good. I like it. All right, guys. So that kind of wraps up the waiver wires, things like that. Again, guys, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, anything like that, put them out there in the chat. We'd love interacting and talking with y'all. So if you've got some questions, things like that, let us know, and we'll walk that with you on that one and talk it out. Let's go ahead and head over to the Thursday night game. You've got the Ravens heading to the Dolphins. The Ravens are favored by 7.5. The over-under on this one is 46. What are your thoughts here?
I am taking Baltimore plus 7.5. Honestly, I think they win this game by 2 touchdowns, but I'll take Baltimore plus 7.5. Although Baltimore has this weird thing where they play to their opponent, they probably should have crushed the Vikings last week. That game was a lot more interesting than it needed to be. If it weren't for some late heroics, then they probably don't win that game. And honestly, I thought that they might not, because the Vikings win games that they shouldn't, and they lose games that they shouldn't. I'm still taking Baltimore here. I'll take the points, and I'm going to say that we hit the over here.
I agree with Alex, and that scares me.
It would scare me as well. I've got the Ravens and the under, though.
So I think that the Dolphins will find a way to put up, 17 to 20 points. That being said, I expect the Ravens to put up 30. And if that's the case, then we get to what we need to get to, and that's an over and a Baltimore cover. So Lamar Jackson and that offense will just keep kind of churning along. But at home, I think Miami will find a way to put a couple touchdowns on the board and at least help propel this to the over.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see that as a Miami scoring a couple of touchdowns there as well. So right around about 14 points, and I see the Ravens putting up about 30. So it's going to be a tight one, I think, as far as what that over is going to look like. But I see it just coming in under that 46, but just barely on that one. Guys, any players that you're concerned about maybe playing in this one? Guys that are some sneaky plays.
No, I think it's your usual cast, right? It sounds like Latavius Murray isn't going to be able to go, so you're going to see kind of a mixed running back group out of Baltimore. Lamar Jackson will continue to do his thing. Hollywood Brown, see if we can get Rashard Bateman more involved than he has been in weeks past. Obviously, you have Mark Andrews, so it's going to come down to can this Miami Dolphins defense limit the big play, right? Can they do what so many teams haven't been able to do against Baltimore this year? And that's really just eliminate those explosive passing plays. They're going to run the ball, but when Baltimore's firing on all cylinders, it's because safeties are cheating up, and then Hollywood Brown or even Mark Andrews will get behind that defense and burn them. So it's going to be how these Dolphins decide to scheme against the passing attack of Baltimore, not the rushing attack.
I like it.
I think a big one for me is who's going to be playing quarterback for Miami. I mean, because there's a couple leagues where I'm in where I'm a little desperate for a second quarterback, namely our guillotine league. I had to plug Jacoby Brissett into the home league even this week because of bye weeks and whatnot. And I've been trying to desperately improve my quarterback situation, but I've had no takers. Yeah, that's going to be the key for me is who's playing at quarterback. I'm more comfortable, like I said earlier, I'm more comfortable playing Jacoby Brissett than I am Tua. And if Tua is the one that's going, then I'm probably going to have to look elsewhere.
Fair enough. Alrighty, guys. Well, let's go ahead and we'll head on over into the pines and the shines for week 10. So let's go ahead and start off with the pines. Who you got as your pine for week 10?
All right. I know I took kind of a cheap route last week by picking a backup running back. This week, I'm going to go with a guy that a lot of people took in the first round. And I'm going to go with Antonio Gibson as the Washington football team hosts the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know that Gibson is a right going up against the number one rushing defense, but I know that he's a threat to catch the ball out of the backfield. So I'm fully prepared to be wrong on this one, but only because he gets passing work, not because of his rushing work.
Very cool. I've got DJ Moore as my pine this week, right? We're going to have some, most likely we're going to see a changeover at quarterback here with the injury news of Sam Darnold coming out. And that's going to really go one of two ways, right? PJ Walker could be the answer to the Sam Darnold woes that the Carolina Panthers have been experiencing. CMC is back, but they've got a tougher matchup against Arizona. Arizona's been pretty good against opposing offensives there. And the fact that we haven't really seen anything coming from this Carolina offense here doesn't necessarily give me the warm and fuzzies when I think about playing some of these guys. So DJ Moore is going to be my pine this week.
My pine this week is going to be Damien Harris. This Cleveland defense has a swagger about them here the past couple weeks. And yes, they did take the L against Pittsburgh, but bounced back. And really, the defense wasn't the problem against the Steelers 2 weeks ago. And then we saw what they were able to do when they came out and really shut down the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think that's going to continue for them. As far as defensively, I expect a low-scoring, gritty game. But I think the Patriots are going to have to find a way to throw the ball a little bit more because running against the Cleveland Browns has been very, very difficult for teams all season long.
Absolutely. Alrighty, guys, let's go ahead and head on over into the shines. Who you got for your shine in week 10?
All right, so I wanted to take the entire Cowboys roster, but that's kind of against the rules here. So I'll single out CeeDee Lamb, who had 2 catches on 9 targets against Denver, and I meant to look it up, and I didn't to see what his official drop count was, but it had to have been in the thousands in that game because, my goodness, the guy just did not catch anything. I think it's a bounce back game for the Cowboys. I think they got a wake up call against Denver. And then there's some added motivation for the Cowboys in this game. And I know it doesn't pertain exactly to the offensive side of things, but Dan Quinn gets to play his old team in Atlanta. So as the D coordinator. So I think the focus will be there this week for Dallas. And I think Dak, another game back, a full week of practice. I just think that Dallas is going to look like the Dallas team that we kind of expected them to look like and not what they looked like last week. So I'll take CeeDee Lamb here.
I like it. My shine, and this was part of the reason that I told you couldn't have the entire Cowboys offense, is because I really like Zeke Elliott for this week. I think he has a bounce back game. We already discussed a little bit about the fact that we all kind of, the way that it looks, Zeke kind of looks like the better back there. And I think that is very much the case. Atlanta is an okay matchup. It isn't a great, but it's not a bad matchup. It's an okay matchup for that. But I think that you're going to see the Cowboys really show that they, really come out the gate swinging, like they've got something to prove, and have that bounce back kind of game going, and to the point where you'll see them just ice this game, partway through the second half, and you'll see Zeke get an absolute ton of work, and I see him having a very, very big game.
And then my shine for the week is going to be James Conner. No Chase Edmonds. He will see the lion's share of the workload again. Benjamin will only come in to spell Conner, as I said earlier this game. So I expect him to find the end zone again. I think he's up to 13 touchdowns this season, or 14 touchdowns this season. So James Conner is finding the end zone. He looks a lot like the guy. He looks a lot like his rookie season when he played for Pittsburgh, right? Like he's running hard between the tackles. Knock on wood, he's been able to stay healthy, and we talked about this in the preseason. If Conner can stay healthy, you guys heard it here. He would outscore Chase Edmonds, and it is absolutely playing out in full force. So I think Conner has a huge week for the Cardinals, as Kyler still coming back from injury, D-Hop still nursing a hamstring, so why not run the ball a bunch with James Conner?
I like it. That's the pines, the shines for week 10. Make sure you tune in next week to get the results of that, and we can talk about whether or not Alex actually hit one of them or not again. So, all righty, guys, we do have a question coming in on YouTube. JAC on YouTube is saying that he traded Cordero, Patterson, and Amari Cooper for Zeke and Brandon Cooks. Do you think I messed up considering Patterson's versatility? What are your thoughts here, guys?
No. I think that's a wonderful trade for capitalizing on on Cordero Patterson on his high. Zeke will be far more consistent for you, and the Cowboys are coming into this stretch of games that as long as they're able to, I guess, play up to their potential and they don't lay another egg, Zeke's going to see a ton of work in these next 4 or 5 games. So I absolutely like that. Brandon Cooks, with Tyrod coming back, I think he is a PPR monster, and is really maybe only a half step back from Amari Cooper. And in some weeks, he's going to completely outshine him because he's the only show in town. So I like the trade a lot. I like the fact that you upgraded at running back substantially. And then receiver, it's only a slight downgrade. So I'd say you came ahead in this one. Congratulations.
I think that's just a cosign from Alex and I, and Kevin hit it pretty well on the head there. So not very often do you get it where we're completely unanimous without even some differing takes on that. But I think we all agree that is 100% good deal. And I think one that each of us would make being in that same type of position. Again, guys, if you have any questions or comments, anything like that, make sure you're throwing them out there, and we'll walk with you and talk about them. All of those types of really cool things as we go through, finishing out the show here. So kind of the next segment here, right, is a segment where it's, what do you do with some of these guys going forward, right? Like they're either coming back off some injuries. Maybe they're, they've had some up weeks. They've had some down weeks. They've had some, the schedule gets tougher or easier for them, some of that kind of stuff there. So we've got some names that we're going to talk about here, and we're going to kind of go through the list as far as what would you do with these guys here, and what do you really putting their expectations for them rest of season type of thing. And we'll just start with the guy that's coming off of injury here, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule from what we were originally given there. But Russell Wilson making his return to play the Green Bay Packers this week and playing with the Seahawks team that has to do a lot of winning to get into the playoff picture or get into the playoffs this year. What are your thoughts for Russell Wilson rest of the way?
In 2 quarterback leagues, you got to keep him and you got to play him. There's just no question about that. In single quarterback leagues, I'm looking to trade him. Now that he's coming back, I'm looking to play off of the hype that Russ is coming back, and I'm looking to get something comparable and try and trade off of him as quickly as possible. And the reason for that is, even when Russ has been healthy for entire seasons. The last 5 weeks of the season, his statistical output drops like a freaking rock. And I see no reason that that's going to change. They don't have a running game. Yes, Chris Carson's fighting to come back, but there's nothing to say that one wrong hit and then Carson's out for the rest of the season and, God forbid, longer because of this issue that he's having with his neck. So teams are going to be able to be really one-dimensional as far as defense looks against the Seahawks offense. The shining spot with all this is the Seahawks defense is giving up so many freaking yards that Russ is going to have to throw the ball for them to stay in it. So out of a function, yes, you can gamble with that. But if I can trade Russ for a comparable swap somehow and be able to trade off of that, then I'm looking to do that, because I just don't have faith that the Seahawks are going to pull a rabbit out of their hat and find this magical run that gets them into the playoffs.
Alex, what are your thoughts on Russell Wilson rest of the way?
Yeah, I think I think I'd lean towards trade here as well. If I could find, the appropriate, the dance partner to go with me, I think I'd look at trading. Again, he's not, the sprightly young chicken that he once was. So I think that, especially in in dynasty leagues, I think, the value is probably as good as it's going to get to try and, go younger. So I'd lean towards trading him.
Okay. I think Russ is going to come out just firing. I think the fact that you've seen the Seahawks not necessarily be able to do many things without Russ back there. And so I think they're going to come out and he's going to light the world on fire on this one. So I'm probably that's one of those that I'm looking to try and acquire him going down this back stretch here. But I know that I'm probably not in the majority on that one there. Before we hit up our next one, we do have a question coming in on YouTube. Lee saying, should I trade CD and Carter for OBJ, Antonio Brown, and Debo? I probably would not. Guys, what's your thoughts here?
I'd actually lean towards yes.
If you need the receiver help, then absolutely.
With Antonio Brown and Debo, who knows where OBJ is going to wind up?
Who knows when Antonio Brown's back?
That's also fair. But I think if you can absorb it and you can wait, I mean, if those guys are back and they're playing, come week 13 when you hit your playoffs, week 14 when you hit your playoffs, I think that's a good crew that could lead you.
Yeah. The downside is, right, you're trading two healthy players for a player that's in a walking boot still, a player who has a nagging calf injury on a team that most likely will soon be out of playoff contention, and a player who just got released and God only knows where he's going to end up. So, I mean, yeah, probably. I think, Derek, you're right. At face value, just glancing at it, it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. But Carter's been pretty serviceable for the Jets.
As a flex play.
Yeah, as a flex play. CeeDee Lamb's definitely had his ups and downs. And, yeah, you'd like to be able to get more out of that name recognition. But realistically, if you could tell me that Antonio Brown and Debo are both coming back and they'll be healthy to finish the stretch down the season, I'd say do it in a heartbeat. And OBJ is just a filler. But with OBJ not knowing where he's going to land and Brown not knowing when he's coming back and expecting Debo to be healthy, I do think that's a lot. So, yeah, I think you need to sit on CD and Carter for the time being here and see if something else comes along next week before your trade deadline, if that's, this week, next week, the following, depending on your league setup.
Yeah, I would certainly stick with the CD and Carter route. OBJ doesn't have a team right now, right? There's lots of inquiries, and I say that knowing full well that probably by the end of the week he'll be rostered somewhere on a team, things like that. But there's a lot of questions out there, right? Like, if he really is this top 5 or top 10 receiver, how does a team not claim him on waivers for a $7 million hit on the salary cap? And there was lots of teams out there that had the cap room to be able to do that. So I don't know that OBJ is, the OBJ that we're used to seeing from that name power to it. Those days, I don't believe, are still here, and they're a thing of the distant past. Antonio Brown, right? Exactly what you were talking about in the walking boot. Debo Samuel with that calf injury, even though he's been seeing a ton of targets and is a volume play. CeeDee Lamb is on a very high-powered offense. The Niners are not as high-powered there, and CD and Dak, like. You just look at last week, Dak doesn't overthrow 2 of those passes. CD has a very usable, serviceable week that's, again, he is a wide receiver 1 type of player. Michael Carter's been a usable flex for you, especially the last couple of weeks. And so, no, I would not trade those, and I would stand pat on that one. Cloudy YTT on YouTube saying, yo, guess who won because of a subpar Steelers defense up 10 points Monday night. Congratulations on the win. That's always a fun one when you get to walk away with a win on that one and you get your Monday night showdown walk away on that one. Evan on YouTube asking, who can I get for Mike Williams and A.J. Brown? And would you trade Carr for Hurts? Is somebody really willing to trade Hurts for Carr straight up?
Well, the problem with that is there's the uncertainty in Philly, right? Like,
right.
As good as Jalen Hurts has been for fantasy, like there's a lot of rumblings in Philadelphia that the experiment is over after 11 games, the 2 last season and the 9 this year, and they're already moving on. Like,
they ran their MVP caliber quarterback who led them to a regular season and then handed off the reins to a Super Bowl, the first one that they won in 50 years out of town. So I'm not surprised.
Philly's tough. Carr, you know what you're going to get with Derek Carr, and that's a good thing, right? Like, you don't have to worry about is this the week. So sometimes having that security is nice. If you need to make a big move, Evan, and you're trying to get a push to get into the playoffs, then Carr for Hurts, it makes sense. As long as for the Hurts side, right? Because you get the upside of all the rushing and going from there. But if you're already kind of firmly in the playoffs and you're in the driver's seat in your league, I think I'd ride with Derek Carr and just take the known. And it's not splashy and it's not sexy and it's not always fun, but you know what you're going to get with Derek Carr. And sometimes I would rather have that stability than going into the playoffs and having to worry about that. On top of Philadelphia's bye week is week 14. So Jalen Hurts, there's a good chance that the first round of your playoffs is Philadelphia's bye week. So that's another reason not to bring Jalen Hurts onto your roster, because even if you get to the playoffs, now you're without a starting quarterback for that week unless you have a very serviceable secondary option on your team. As far as Mike Williams and A.J. Brown, what can you get for them? I think it depends on what guys in your league need. I would certainly think that those two combined would be enough to at least take a run at a Davante Adams and see kind of where you get. I don't see Tyreek or Cooper Kupp owners moving off of either one of those players, kind of regardless of who you're tossing at them. So Davante Adams might be the next best. Like, that's a consolation prize. It's a pretty damn good consolation prize. But and if you're looking on the running back side of things, see if you can trade A.J. Brown for Najee Harris straight up. Mm-hmm. That might be something that someone would entertain if they need help at receiver and they have some running back depth. So something like that to kind of get creative. Just be willing to, if you're really wanting to move off of them, be willing to take less than what you think you should, because as with all fantasy leagues, we all feel like our players are more valuable than probably what they really are. And it lets egos get in the way during trade negotiations at times. So just be realistic, and shoot for a Davante Adams or a Najee Harris and then see what you can settle out at.
Absolutely. I like it. Kevin, you were talking about trade egos, things like this. This one coming in on YouTube from Cloudsy YTT. Bro, I think someone in my league is high. Stephon Diggs and Alvin Kamara for T. Higgins and Adrian Peterson. I'm not accepting that. Nor would any of us. That's a hard pass.
I don't think that they would accept that if you turn around and flipped it to them. Like you get random ones. So
that's a shoot your shot and see if you're just as high as they are.
Yeah. I was in a dynasty league, and I got a trade offer earlier this week. They wanted Jerry Jeudy and my second-round pick for next year for Mike Evans. And while it's a great win now move, like, why would I give up the youth and the draft pick? Like, Come on, guys. Like, let's see where this is going here. So some people everybody sees it differently, right? And there's no harm in asking, but don't be surprised when the answer is no.
Right. Or they just don't respond because there's some of those that I just let some of those really bad ones just sit there and percolate. But JAC on YouTube, what is James Conner's value once Edmonds comes back? I'm starting him this week, but do you see him as a flex play over Cooks and Damien Harris in a 10-man 0.75 point per reception league when Edmonds is back? I think James Conner's value when he when Edmonds comes back, his value goes back to what you saw the first half of the season.
Yeah. I mean, Conner's been a top 15 back, and that's where his value is going to stay. I think without Chase Edmonds, he's elevated to a top 12 back. I think in PPR leagues, he's number 11 right now after this week's slate of games. So he's right there in the top 12. He stays in the top 15 once Chase Edmonds comes back. He is the guy who's getting into the end zone. He is the guy who is receiving more of the passing work and really looks like the better back. Like, they like both of them, which is fine. They try and keep both of them healthy and not burning them out. And that's just the way the NFL's going. But Conner's the better back right now, and he's the one that I'd been saying since the preseason. He's the one I wanted on my team. It wasn't Chase Edmonds. I wanted to wait a round, 2 rounds, and get that discount and take James Conner, because this was more likely in my eyes than Chase Edmonds being, a top 12 running back based off of the statistical, outputs that he had been having the last season and a half. So you sit on Conner and you play him.
Yeah, and when you look at how they utilize James Conner, even with Chase Edmonds there, right? James Conner, like, coming into the season, we knew he was going to get most of his fantasy value off of end zone work and getting into the end zone, especially with how the Cardinals tend to run the offense. And James Conner was always going to be that goal line, red zone type of running back. And Cliff Kingsbury loves to run the ball right up behind the center, coming through it and have those guys kind of running downhill. And that's James Conner's move. Like, that's what he's really good at is running between the tackles, being a little bit of that power back, pushing the pile, trying to get into the end zone. And that's what you've seen all year long. And that's not going to change when Chase Edmonds comes back. Conner's still getting the bulk of the work, and Edmonds is going to be a PPR type of play there. So
I guess the second part of your question, yes, I like James Conner over Damien Harris, and a lot of that's because of the receiving work that he gets. Damien Harris just doesn't see it. And yes, he has been extremely efficient this year for the Patriots. He doesn't fall into the end zone quite as much as you would like to see, just because that New England offense doesn't move up and down the field. They grind out games. They don't go, put points up on the board like the Cardinals can. They're not as explosive. And I like Brandon Cooks. We talked about him a little bit earlier. I like his upside with a more competent quarterback, being able to feed him targets. But realistically, between the three, it's James Conner for me the rest of the season. From where we're at today, looking forward, than either one of them.
Absolutely. Alex, any other thoughts on that one? All righty. Another question coming in. Evan, who has had the trade question for Mike Williams and A.J. Brown, and you were talking about potentially going out there and getting like a Devontae Adams. He's got both Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. So, that's one of those that, Evan, you've got just some very nice flex type of options, and you've got a lot of flexibility there. So if you were to take both Mike Evans and A.J. Brown, you could package them together and go out and get, a position of need type of thing. So that's really where I'd be curious kind of what the rest of your roster construct looks like and where your position of need really lies on that. My guess is that, it's probably a little bit more of a running back type of thing, and you may need some depth for that. You may need some help there because with those two wide receivers, you're typically going to be starting them. And unless you're in a 3 wide receiver league or a multi-flex type of position there, those other 2 are just kind of nice flex type of pieces. And you can go shoot your shot on getting something to really bring that thing home on a roster construct.
Najee Harris is as crazy as this week sounds. Nick Chubb, because Kareem Hunt's going to be out for probably another 4 or 5 weeks with the calf injury. So that's another option. Stay away from DeAndre Swift. It's just too unpredictable because all of his work is coming from the passing game. And when it's working, it works great. But when it doesn't, his floor is about as low as any, top 24 running back that there is. If he's not seeing that passing down work, we saw that against the Eagles. Najee, Nick Chubb, you might be able to find someone who, depending on your league, they might be freaking out about the Zeke knee injury. That might be an option.
James Robinson might be another option out there as well.
See, I think that one's a little too low.
I'm taking James Robinson and another piece.
Yeah, if you can get James Robinson and whatever tight end option, if you need to improve at tight end or something like that, James Robinson and Mark Andrews. Like that would be something worth looking into as well.
Yeah. I think I like that a lot. Another question coming in there. Rank the tight ends for the remainder of the season. Arnold, Freiermuth, Cole, Kmet. Who you guys got here?
Freiermuth
is my number 1. I think I probably lean Dan Arnold and then Cole Kmet. Any other thoughts on that order?
No, I like that order.
I might. I don't know. The other 2 don't really do anything for me. I think it's Freiermuth, and then outside of that, it's pretty distant second and third.
Cool. Is Stephon Diggs for Terry McLaurin or Jamar Chase for McLaurin a good trade? So Stephon Diggs for Terry McLaurin or Jamar Chase for McLaurin?
No.
Man.
Dude, it's hard to give up on Jamar Chase, man. Like,
definitely not Chase.
No,
definitely not. I'm thinking Dick. Like, man, that Buffalo offense has looked like poo the last couple of weeks. And I get with where you're coming. Like, Diggs has been extremely underwhelming this year and has been a big fantasy disappointment from where we drafted him as the 3rd, 4th wide receiver off the board to now. It has been very disturbing, I guess we'll say. But I think I'd keep chasing Diggs. The Terry McLaurin situation isn't necessarily any better than Diggs. Like, it's just changing your problems to a team with a lesser quarterback. And when it comes down to it, if all things, with things being the way they are, I trust Josh Allen and his ability to find Stephon Diggs and come out of this rut that the Bills are in more than I trust Ron Rivera, a defensive-minded head coach, with his backup quarterback, who's played admirably, but is not, he is not a elite quarterback in this league. I stay with Diggs and Chase. I think that's the right call.
Very cool. Alex, any other thoughts on that one?
No, I think I'd ride this out.
Cool. Another question here. Do you guys see Justin Jefferson hogging most of the target share in the second half, similar to last year? Considering trading Jefferson because the Vikings seem like a run first and Thielen is still hoarding end zone targets. What are you guys' thoughts here?
I freaking hope so, because I need Justin Jefferson to wake the F up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping for that. If it depends on what you get, right? There's a price for everybody. There just is. And it doesn't matter whether it's, Christian McCaffrey or Derrick Henry when he was healthy, or Justin Jefferson or whoever else. Like everyone has a price. So if you can get what you believe to be fair value and that you're able to improve your roster, then I see nothing wrong with it. But if you're not getting fair value and you're just going to move him because he's frustrating, I would urge you against doing that, because as frustrating as he is, the talent is still there. And eventually, as we've seen year after year after year, talent does win out. And yes, it's been an irritating 9 weeks, but all it takes is, a 3-week sample size, and all of a sudden Justin Jefferson's back to 10, 11 targets a game with 9 catches and 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he's the difference between, make it as, getting a top seed in the playoffs or possibly missing out on the playoffs, depending on how tight your league is contested. So it's a mixed bag answer, and I understand that, but it really does just depend on what you can get for him and if you believe that truly makes your team better. If so, that's fine. If not, don't move him just because you're frustrated with him.
Right. Evan put his team in there that the trade earlier. So his team is Carr, Najee, James Robinson, Tyreek, A.J. Brown, Mike Williams, Gallup, Knox, Adams, and Tua. So,
this is why I can't get Najee or freaking Devontae Adams.
He's already got him.
Because he already has these guys on his roster.
James Robinson was another name that we threw out there. James Robinson.
So I tell you what, good for you. Like,
yes.
I like this team that you've constructed.
Yeah, great job.
I mean,
package them together and go get your or
see
get
if you
one
can
of
go
them.
Get Mark Andrews or Hawkinson.
Yeah.
Like Knox was great, but he was very touchdown dependent, and we don't know if that's going to continue once he gets back. Like, there's nothing wrong with go getting yourself another solid tight end if you can grab a Mark Andrews or a TJ Hawkinson, or take a swing at Darren Waller. So something like that, and see what you can do. Honestly, Travis Kelce's been pretty underwhelming this season, and a lot of fantasy owners are frustrated with Travis Kelce. And with them taking him number 1 overall, chances are they have a deficiency somewhere.
Like wide receiver?
Wide receiver would be my guess, because typically if you go tight end first round, most players are then following that up running back.
Mm-hmm.
So they might be wide receiver deficient. So that's where I'd kind of take a run and see if you can improve your tight end position. But overall,
great roster.
Like I said, Nick Chubb, a premier top 3 tight end. And if you can't get, a top 10 running back or a top 3 tight end, you sit on A.J. Brown and hope that Ryan Tannehill finds a way to keep him involved in the offense.
Right. Well, the other thing too would be that you could package one of those with a Derek Carr and go out and get an elite tier probably quarterback in this one. I'm assuming that only having two quarterbacks like that is probably a single QB league. So if you wanted to do that upgrade at QB, you could probably go out there and do that and really make some hay there, top to bottom roster wise as well.
Yeah, Carr and AJ for Lamar.
Yeah. Tom Brady would be another option out there as well.
Absolutely, Tom Brady. See if you can get that to move off. That's absolutely an option.
Yep, I like it. Cloudy saying that they got a counter trade for the guy who tried to get Kamara, Gronk for TJ Hawkinson. He might be. You could certainly throw that out there, and maybe Gronk coming back off of an injury and the hype, and maybe they're a Gronk fan. You could try that. I wouldn't hold out my hopes on that one though.
Yeah, Gronk's a mixed bag, right? Like he's truly going to be that player. If when you keep him, you're going to be frustrated and feel like you should have moved off of him. But if you move off of Gronk, he's going to go back to this touchdown rampage that he was on the first part of the season, and you're going to be smacking yourself going, why in the world did I move off of him? So Gronk's a tricky one. And really it's be willing to accept the fact that he accepts it. And if he doesn't, trust the fantasy gods that that's what was in the cards and what's best for you.
Yes. What about Julio Jones and Diggs for Debo Samuel? Julio Jones is on my bench, so I was thinking maybe he would bite since it's a big name. And you could certainly do that, but again, Debo Samuel nursing a calf injury there, and we've seen him be rather streaky the last couple of weeks there, not what we've seen necessarily over the front half, plus a potential move to Trey Lance actually hurts the Debo upside as far as I'm seeing it.
Yeah, I think you keep Diggs.
Yeah.
Julio's a whatever. Like I would have no problem cutting Julio and picking up someone else off the waiver wire at this point. Like I'm just not seeing it, but part of that might be my goggles because that's the train I've been riding all season long.
Yes, absolutely. Guys, let's go ahead and pick up one name here on the list that we had, and let's just talk about them, and we'll wrap that up here real quick. So between Saquon, DJ Moore, Justin Fields, Mike Williams, Brandon Ayuk, who do you guys want to talk about the most on this?
Alex wants to talk about Saquon.
Actually, let's talk about DJ Moore.
Okay. Go ahead and lead us off there, Alex.
Well, I mean, that's what are we doing with him? That DJ Moore we all thought was going to have. This might as well have been renamed the DJ Moore Truther podcast there for a while last year. Right? We were all on board the DJ Moore train, and it just has not panned out this year. And now there's another change at quarterback coming there in Carolina. He just has not been getting the targets. He's not been getting the production. What are you guys looking to do with DJ Moore?
So DJ Moore is still seeing about 8 or 9 targets a game. It's not
third in the NFL for targets.
Yeah. So the opportunities are there. The accuracy has not been there. So I am in the camp that having Christian McCaffrey back will help DJ Moore because the safety will not be able to bracket coverage DJ Moore, knowing that Robbie Anderson is just apparently disappeared from football, and they have someone else to focus on. So if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy, I do think that DJ Moore can bounce back and finish inside, that top 15 wide receiver range. I think right now, at least in our league, he's wide receiver 11 still. I'd have to look at a true PPR league, but I'm assuming it's still top 15. And the opportunities are there. So do I trust PJ Walker to get him the ball? Probably about as much as I trust Sam Darnold. PJ Walker may not have 4 turnovers a game. And that's part of it too, right? Like, how many opportunities has he lost out on because the Panthers just kept turning the freaking ball over? And Christian McCaffrey will eliminate some of those sins. So, like I said, I'm in the camp that I'm still going to, unless I get an offer that I like and that I feel like is fair, much like I said earlier. Everybody has a price tag. If I feel like it's a fair offer, I'll move off of him. Like, I'm not so tied to him that, I'm going to ask for someone's firstborn child. But I'm not going to sell him for peanuts. Like, he's not a guy that I'm just looking to get away from. I would much rather move. I would have an easier time giving up Saquon for peanuts than I would for DJ Moore. And a lot of that we've all discussed on the show, right? And our feelings around that and how this season's played out. Because at least DJ Moore's available. His stat line may suck because of the quarterback play, but at least he's going to see the opportunities as opposed to just being in street clothes on the sideline.
Right. Like, you look at some of these things. So DJ Moore in a half-point PPR is wide receiver 13 on the year, right? He's got more yards and receptions than a lot of these guys that are ahead of him on the list. The big difference is touchdowns. And that's the thing that held him back last year, as well as the fact that the Panthers have a hard time seeming to find him to get him the ball to score touchdowns on that one. So the fact that he has been without a touchdown for, I believe we're going on 5 to 6 weeks right now. Something would tell me that those touchdowns are going to come, and that Christian McCaffrey coming back allows them more opportunity for touchdowns the remainder of the season there as well. So, like Kevin was saying, Christian McCaffrey is going to cover up a lot of those sins, and PJ Walker may actually be an added benefit to DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson as far as that goes, right? Like, I don't know if you guys have watched watch the sidelines when the Panthers offense was on the sidelines there. There's a very big difference as far as those receivers. Like, they would tend to gravitate towards PJ Walker over the last couple of weeks, more so than Sam Darnold. It just seemed like there wasn't necessarily seemed like some conflict there between Sam Darnold and those receivers, whereas PJ Walker seemed like they started building a little chemistry there. Some of those types of things as far as, some of the sideline shots. And granted, it's a very limited and narrow picture there, but it wouldn't necessarily surprise me that you see him actually have a little bit better performance going forward. So I'm looking to hold on to him. Again, though, if I can move him and get a better offer and improve my team through a trade, I would do that as well. But I think that, he's wide receiver 13.5 point PPR, and I think you'll see him finish inside of wide receiver 1 territory when the season's all said and done, because he is, he's got 600 yards. He only is 677 yards. Like, Michael Pittman has a very similar stat line to him, but Michael Pittman has a couple more touchdowns, and Michael Pittman's about 4 or 5 spots ahead of him right now in that rankings.
And the good thing is with DJ Moore, quarterback play dependent, these next couple weeks are wide receiver friendly, or more wide receiver friendly. At Arizona, they're home against Washington, and then at Miami before their bye week. So these next 3 weeks, you should, in quotations, see a resurgence of some sort from DJ Moore, hoping that he gets in the end zone. But like I said, the targets are still there. 8, 11, 12, 12, 7, 13, 10, 8, 7. Like, it's not that they're going away from him. It's the quality of target that has been kind of poo-poo, if you will.
All righty. Alex, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right. I like it. Last couple of questions. We're going to hit what's in the chat here, and then we're going to sign out. One more trade value, Christian Kirk and Daryl Henderson for James Robinson. So just take that on the face value of the trade there. Christian Kirk, Daryl Henderson for James Robinson. Are you doing it? I'm taking the Christian Kirk, Daryl Henderson side of it over James Robinson. I think that Rams offense been very high powered, more likely to see the end zone and see red zone type of targets than the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I think I take the Henderson side.
Yeah, I mean, weeks 15 through 17. So if that's what you're looking for, the Rams are home against Seattle, at Minnesota, at Baltimore. So they do have 2 road games in there. But all 3 of those teams have been able to be run against this season. And then as for the Jaguars, let's see here. The Jaguars are pretty juicy, though. Home against Houston, at the Jets, and then New England week 17, which will probably be a challenge if that's your championship game week. So that one might be the bummer. New England hasn't been as good against the run, but it's the one thing that Jacksonville has done consistently. So my guess is that's what Bill Belichick's going to try and take away first. So all things considered, I think it's probably about even weeks 15 through 17 between those 2 backs. And you never know with injuries, you might be forced to need a guy like Christian Kirk to step in there. So I don't see the reason in doing it. I think it's kind of apples to apples one way or the other. But if it makes you feel better, I'm not going to tell you not to.
I like it. Evan, with that pretty awesome roster, is playing against Dak, CD, James, Connor, Pitts, Melvin Gordon. You might have a little bit of a tougher matchup there, but I think your roster still is greater than. So JAC is saying he has Dalvin Cook and Chris Carson. Carson's in his IR spot. Should he keep Madison and Alex Collins on my bench, or is it a waste of bench spots?
You keep Madison.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any sort of upgrade on your waiver wire, you can drop Alex Collins. He didn't do anything to wow me, and
he was a nice fill-in, but not good enough.
And now that Russ is back too.
Yeah, he was the in case of emergency break glass guy, right?
Yep.
But now you can drop Alex Collins and surely find some sort of a better component on the waiver wire at any position that would help improve your team a little bit more.
whatever you do, don't
Cloudy's-
try to trade him to the guy who's got Chris Carson in your league, because it didn't fly. Tried that.
There you go. So Cloudy thinks that Alex Collins not a good option. JAC says the same. Cloudy giving you the advice to pick up Melvin Gordon. If Melvin Gordon's on your waiver wire, like your league's doing something interesting there, because Melvin Gordon's firmly an RB2 in just about every format. Not available in your league. So very cool. Guys, I think that brings us to the end of all the comments, all the questions there. Any final thoughts for the listeners? Anything else that you guys want to discuss?
No, not anything major. I was, keep firing off the questions. I mean, we're more than happy to answer. We debate these kind of all day long and go back and forth, and then get back to everybody as quickly as we can. So keep firing them off, and we'll let you know what our 2 cents is. And good luck, guys. I mean, this is grind time, right? A lot of the folks who are kind of down and out, they're starting to give up. This is, if you're looking to improve your team, it's not a bad time to see if you can kind of cherry pick some of the lesser teams in your league if they're just kind of over it. And hopefully y'all are in contention, and just keep hammering that waiver wire and always try and improve. Don't settle.
Alex, any final thoughts for the listeners and viewers?
I hope for everybody's sake that we kind of get back to some normalcy here in week 10. And we hope that week 9 was just the aberration that it was.
Yes.
And that week 10 we start to see the horses come back and actually make the hay that we all expected to them. But I don't know, man. I don't know what to make of this year. It's been just a crazy year. So just pay attention. Just pay attention.
I like it. Last question. Before we go, would you go with Melvin Gordon or Daryl Henderson for week 10?
I'm going with Henderson because he's seeing the lion's share of the volume.
Javonte Williams is getting some good
He's
run
getting
here.
some run, and this is the time of year that a lot of us expected Javonte to become more prevalent in this offense.
Correct.
Yes, they're still splitting carries, but we're definitely seeing a lot of that burst and youth out of Javonte right now. So for me, it's Daryl Henderson, just because I can trust the volume that will be there in what I presume to be a bounce-back game for the Rams after they laid an egg against the Tennessee Titans.
I would agree with that. So, JAC saying, thanks, y'all. Have a great pod. JAC, we appreciate that. Thanks for tuning in. You can hit us up on our socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Good Old Boys FF. Do us a favor, hop onto the YouTube channel, click the subscribe button, ring the bell. The Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast YouTube channel. Guys, any other thoughts?
No,
All
have
right.
a good one.
Have a good one, y'all. For Kevin and Alex, I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe.